The insurance company sent the denial in an email. Not a letter, not a phone call. An email at 6:47 in the morning with a subject line that said prior authorization request, Claire Cole. I was sitting in the parking lot of an IHOP off I-75 eating a breakfast sandwich I'd bought at a gas station, and I read it twice on my phone before I put the phone face down on the passenger seat and just sat there for a while. That was it. Door closed. The sandwich was cold. I ate the rest of it anyway. Claire's condition had a name I still can't spell right. Something with the vertebrae. Something that had been getting worse since she was 9, and she was 11 now. The specialist in Atlanta had been clear about it. There was a clinic in Zurich that did a specific kind of spinal fusion that nobody in the States was doing yet, and it had an 83% success rate. And without it, the curve would keep progressing until it caused nerve damage, and after that, the conversation changed entirely. He'd said all of this very calmly, like he was reading from a document, which I appreciated. I don't do well with people who get soft when they're delivering bad news. Just tell me what's happening. What was happening was the surgery cost $240,000. My insurance had covered the Atlanta visits, the imaging, the specialist consultations. They would not cover an experimental procedure at a foreign facility. That was the language they used, experimental, like the 83% meant nothing. I'd been hauling freight for 11 years, mostly regional, some long haul, a stretch with a refrigerated carrier out of Laredo that paid decent but put me on the road for 3 weeks at a time. I had savings. Not $240,000 savings. Nobody I knew had that. Claire's mom and I had been separated for 4 years, and she was working 2 jobs already, and I wasn't going to ask her to take on debt she couldn't carry. That wasn't happening. So I started looking at other options. That's what you do. You look. I found Blackwood Solutions through a job board I'd never used before, one of those sites that aggregates postings from 100 other sites and shows you everything at once. The listing was plain: CDLA driver, specialized cargo transport, Georgia, Florida region, experience required, background check required, compensation negotiable. The negotiable part was doing a lot of work in that sentence. I clicked it mostly because I was bored and had another 4 hours before my next pickup. They called me back inside 20 minutes. That was the first thing that felt a little off. Most companies take a week. Blackwood called me back before I'd finished my coffee. The recruiter was efficient, didn't waste time. He confirmed my license class, my years of experience, my clean record, and then he said the compensation for a full contract was 10 times standard rate. He said it the same way you'd say we offer 2 weeks of vacation. Just a fact. I asked him to repeat it. He did. I asked what the cargo was. He said a supervisor would explain that at orientation, and that if I wanted to proceed, I should come to their Valdosta office on Monday. I went on Monday. The Valdosta office was in a business park off Bemis Road, between a physical therapy clinic and a place that sold industrial shelving. The building had no signage except a small placard by the door that said Blackwood Solutions, LLC. Inside it was plain. Waiting area, a few chairs, a front desk with a woman who didn't look up when I came in. She told me to sit. I sat. Marvin Peters came out about 10 minutes later. He was a big guy, 6'2", maybe 230, the kind of build that used to be athletic and had settled into just solid. Close-cropped silver hair, pale gray eyes, a dark collared shirt with the sleeves rolled to the elbow. He shook my hand once, firm, and told me to follow him. His office was small and had nothing personal in it. No photos, no diplomas, nothing on the walls. A desk, 2 chairs, a filing cabinet, a whiteboard with nothing written on it. He sat down and opened a folder with my name on the tab. "You have a daughter," he said. Not a question. "Yeah." "She needs surgery." Still not a question. I said yeah again and waited. He looked at me for a second, then closed the folder. "The work is straightforward. You'll haul cargo from our processing facility to a decommissioned military installation near the Okefenokee. Highway 441, mostly. Night runs, some early morning. The cargo is classified as high-sensitivity environmental samples. Biological material, essentially. It requires specific handling conditions during transport. What kind of specific? He reached into the folder and pulled out a laminated card, about the size of a note card, and slid it across the desk to me. I picked it up. 5 rules, numbered, printed in plain black font. 1. Never stop for more than 60 seconds. 2. If your breath fogs inside the cab, crank the heat immediately and keep it on maximum until it clears. 3. Never look at the trailer doors if they vibrate. Keep your eyes forward. 4. Do not open the trailer under any circumstances during transport. 5. Keep the escort vehicle in your mirrors at all times. If you lose sight of it, pull over and wait. I read them twice. Then I set the card down on the desk. Peters was watching me. Questions? I had about 15. I asked one. What happens if I break a rule? The contract terminates, he said, and the compensation stops. That was the whole answer. He said it like it was the only consequence worth mentioning, which told me something. I filed that away. The escort, I said. That's your people? Company vehicle. They run parallel to your route, hang back about a quarter mile. You won't need to interact with them. I looked at the card again. The rules were strange. I'm not going to pretend they weren't. Breath fogging in July. Trailer doors vibrating. Don't stop for more than 60 seconds. These were not normal handling instructions for biological samples. I knew that. I'm not an idiot. But the money was real. He walked me through the payment structure. Weekly direct deposit. Full contract paid out over 3 months, with a completion bonus that covered the remainder of Claire's surgery cost. He showed me the numbers on a printed sheet. I checked the math twice in my head. It was right. The clinic in Zurich had already confirmed her slot, pending payment. The slot was good for 60 days. I picked up the laminated card and read it one more time. I need to take this with me, I said. That one's yours. I folded it into my jacket pocket. Okay. Peters nodded once, like that settled it. He stood up and offered his hand again. You start Thursday, 5 a.m. Loading dock. Don't be late. I wasn't late. The first run was uneventful. The second was uneventful. By the end of the first month, I had a routine. Wake up at 3:30, coffee from the truck stop on Hill Avenue. Loading dock by 5, on the road by 5:45. The swamp roads were dark and flat and mostly empty at that hour. I kept the escort SUV in my mirrors. I kept the heat where it needed to be. I didn't look at the doors when they moved, and they moved sometimes. A low shudder through the trailer that I could feel in the seat. I kept my eyes on the road. Every Friday, the deposit hit my account. Every Friday, I checked the clinic's payment portal and watched the balance go down. The strangeness of the rules faded pretty fast, honestly. That's the thing about routine. It smooths everything out. Strange things stop being strange when you do them at 5:45 in the morning for 8 weeks in a row. They just become the job. Claire called me every Sunday. She was doing okay. Some pain, some bad days, but okay. She'd started watching a cooking show she liked and wanted to tell me about every episode in detail, which I didn't mind at all. I'd sit in the parking lot of whatever truck stop was closest and just listen to her talk. 2 months in, every rule unbroken, every payment on time. The surgery was scheduled for the following month. I kept the laminated card in my jacket pocket. I'd memorized it by then, but I kept it anyway. The 3rd month started on a Tuesday. I remember that because I'd just gotten off the phone with Claire and she was in the middle of telling me about some episode where a chef made a 5-layer chocolate cake and kept dropping it, and I had to cut her short because Peters called. That bugged me a little. I don't like cutting her off. Peters said the run was at midnight, said it wasn't a standard load. Said he'd be there personally, which had never happened before. In 2 months, I'd gotten my paperwork from a clipboard guy named Denny who smelled like cigarettes and handed me things without making eye contact. Peter's showing up in person was new. I got to the yard around 11:30. The rain was already bad. Tropical depression had been sitting off the coast for 3 days, and it finally decided to come inland and make everything miserable. The kind of rain that doesn't fall straight down. It comes at you sideways, gets in under your collar, makes the lot lights smear into long yellow streaks across the asphalt. I parked and walked over to the loading dock, and Peters was already there. He was standing in the rain without an umbrella, which I thought was a little strange. He had a jacket on, but he wasn't bothering to pull the hood up. Just standing there watching 2 guys in coveralls work a hydraulic dolly under a crate. Big thing. Lead-lined, I could tell from the color and the weight of how it moved. Slow and low, the dolly straining. Probably 4 feet on each side, maybe a little taller. No markings on the outside that I could see. Peters looked at me when I walked up. "Cole," he said. "Yeah?" I said. That was pretty much the whole greeting. He turned back to watch the crate, and I stood next to him and watched too. The 2 guys in coveralls were careful with it. More careful than I'd seen anyone be with anything in that yard. They took about 10 minutes to get it positioned and secured in the Freightliner's trailer, and Peters watched every second of it without moving. When they were done, he handed me my paperwork and my copy of the manifest, which just said environmental samples, same as always. Then he looked at me directly, which Peters didn't usually do. He was more of a somewhere-over-your-shoulder kind of guy. "Rule 4, he said. "Tonight, that's the one that matters. You understand?" Rule 4 was the one about the trailer doors. Don't look at them when they vibrate. Don't open them. Don't touch the latch under any circumstances during transit. "I understand," I said. He held my eye for another second, then nodded and walked back toward the office building. Didn't say good luck. Didn't say anything else. I stood there in the rain for a second, then climbed up into the cab. I sat there with the engine idling and the defroster running and the rain hammering the windshield, and I thought about the way Peters had said it. Not reminding me like it was a formality. Reminding me like he was genuinely concerned I might forget. Like something about tonight specifically made forgetting a real possibility. I pulled out of the yard at midnight exactly. Highway 441 in a tropical depression is not a fun drive. The road surface out there is already uneven in spots. There's a stretch around mile marker 12 where it feels like the county just gave up on maintenance sometime around 2008 and never came back. And the rain was making everything worse. I had the wipers on high and they were barely keeping up. The swamp on both sides of the road was invisible, just black, with the occasional tree line catching my headlights. I saw 2 of the figures in yellow raincoats inside the first 10 miles. One at the side of the road near the old boat launch turnoff. One further up standing in what I was pretty sure was the middle of the lane until my lights hit it, and it wasn't. I didn't slow down for either of them. That's rule 3. I'd done it enough times that my foot didn't even hesitate anymore. I just kept my speed and drove through the space where they were and kept going. I don't know what they are. I stopped trying to figure that out around week 3. The crate was quiet for the first 30 miles. I could feel the weight of it back there. The whole truck sat different with that thing loaded heavier in the rear, a little sluggish on the turns, but quiet. No vibration, no movement. Just wait. Then the truck pulled left. It was subtle at first, just a drift, and I corrected for it without thinking. Then it pulled again, harder, and I felt it in the steering wheel. I checked the dash and the tire pressure warning was on. Front left, dropping. I watched the number for about 5 seconds to see if it was a sensor glitch. It wasn't. I knew Rule 1 by heart. Never stop for more than 60 seconds. I'd practiced it, actually. Not because I'm paranoid, or maybe I am a little, but because 60 seconds is not a lot of time and I wanted to know exactly what I could do in 60 seconds. I'd timed myself with a can of Fix-A-Flat in the parking lot of my apartment complex one afternoon. 48 seconds if I hustled. So I knew I had room. I pulled over onto the shoulder and I was out of the cab before the truck fully stopped rocking. The rain hit me immediately. Cold, sideways, the kind that makes you squint. I went straight to the front left tire, got the sealant can from the cab's side compartment, found the valve stem by feel more than sight, and got it done. 45 seconds. I know because I was counting in my head the whole time, the same way I always did. I climbed back into the cab, pulled the door shut, and sat there for a second with rain dripping off my jacket onto the seat. The tire pressure number was climbing back up. Good. I looked at the GPS to check my position on 441. 441 wasn't there. I stared at the screen for a second because I thought maybe it was a display lag, the GPS catching up after I'd stopped. But it didn't correct. The road I was sitting on wasn't labeled 441. The whole area of the map had changed. Where the swamp should have been, where the highway should have been running straight southeast through nothing for another 20 miles, there was a grid, streets, a neighborhood layout, the kind of dense little block pattern you'd see in an old part of a city. Every street had a name. The whole thing was labeled in small text at the top of the screen. Old Town. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't recognize the name. I looked up through the windshield at the road in front of me, which looked exactly like 441. Same asphalt, same tree line, same rain. And then I looked back at the screen, which showed me sitting in the middle of a street grid that shouldn't exist. I turned the GPS off and turned it back on. It cycled through the startup screen, found the satellite signal, and loaded the same map. Old Town, same grid, same street names. I put my hand on the gear shift and didn't move for a second. The rain kept coming down. I checked the mirrors. Left side, right side, the long rectangle of the rear view showing nothing but rain and dark road and the trailer behind me. No headlights, no black SUV sitting a comfortable distance back the way it always did on every other run, just far enough that you knew it was there without feeling followed. Rule 5 said escort always visible. That was the whole rule. Short, simple, no exceptions listed. I'd never needed an exception because the SUV had always been there, every single run. Sometimes so consistent I'd forget it was a rule at all and just think of it as part of the drive. Not tonight. I checked again, still nothing. Just the tree line on both sides, the rain coming sideways off the swamp, the road disappearing into dark, about 50 yards out. I sat there a second with my foot on the brake and thought about calling Peters. I had his number. He'd given it to me on the first day, told me it was for emergencies, and I'd never used it because I'd never had an emergency. I picked up my phone and the screen was just my wallpaper. Claire, at 6 years old, gap-toothed, holding a snow cone at the state fair. And I put it back down. I didn't know what I'd say. Hey, your SUV's gone. Then what? He either knew or he didn't. And if he knew, me calling wasn't going to fix it. I took my foot off the brake and started rolling. I'd gone maybe a quarter mile when I noticed the cold. Not the regular AC running too long kind of cold. Not the kind you fix by adjusting the dial. This was different. It landed all at once, like the temperature just decided to be something else. My breath fogged up in front of me and I actually looked at it for a second because that was wrong. It was July. It was a tropical depression rolling in off the Gulf, and the outside temp on my dash had been reading 83 degrees when I left the yard. My breath had no business fogging. I hit the heater. Turned it all the way up, the same way I'd done on the other runs when the cold came on, which had happened twice before, and both times the heat had kicked in within about 30 seconds, and the fog had cleared, and I'd kept driving. That was the move. Rule 2. Crank the heat when your breath turns to mist. I knew the rule. I did the rule. The vents blew cold air. Not cool air. Cold. The kind of cold that comes out of a freezer when you've left it open too long. I put my hand in front of the vent and pulled it back. I turned the dial off and turned it back on. Same thing. I hit the defrost button because the windshield was starting to haze at the edges and I needed to see. The defrost blew the same cold air and the haze got worse, not better. I leaned forward and there was a thin skin of ice forming along the bottom of the windshield on the inside, which I didn't think was physically possible given the outside temperature, but there it was. So I had two problems: no escort, and a heater that was actively making things worse. Rule 2 said crank the heat. The heat wasn't working. Rule 5 said keep the escort in sight. The escort was gone. I couldn't fix either one from the driver's seat and I couldn't stop. Rule 1 never stopped more than 60 seconds, and I'd already used up my 60 seconds on the tire. I sat with that for a minute, both hands on the wheel, watching ice build along the bottom of my windshield, while my breath kept coming out in short white clouds. I was wearing a canvas jacket and a t-shirt under it, and I was starting to actually feel the cold in my fingers. I drove forward. I don't know what else I would have done. Turn around maybe, but I was 30 miles into the swamp on a 2-lane highway in a Freightliner with a loaded trailer during a tropical depression, and the nearest place to turn around was probably 10 miles back. And the money had already transferred for the week, and Claire's surgery was in a month. So I drove forward, and I rubbed my hands on my jeans one at a time to keep them from going stiff. And I watched the road and I told myself the SUV was just running late. Mechanical issue, bad weather, something normal. The slamming started about a mile up. The first one hit and I thought tire. I thought something had blown or I'd caught a piece of debris in the road. It was that loud. A single heavy impact from somewhere behind me, deep and solid, and the whole cab shook just a little with it. I checked the tire pressure warning. Nothing. I checked the mirrors. The trailer looked fine. I kept driving. The second one came about 4 seconds later. Same weight, same location, somewhere around the front of the trailer near where the crate was loaded. Then a third, then a fourth. By the fifth one, I'd stopped telling myself it was anything mechanical because mechanical things don't hit at the same interval every 4 seconds like something counting out a beat. This was rhythmic, deliberate, heavy and slow and steady, like someone with a lot of patience and a lot of strength working at something from the inside. I kept both hands on the wheel. I kept my eyes on the road. The slamming kept going, and I drove through it, and I didn't think about what was in the crate because I'd spent 2 months not thinking about what was in the crates, and I was good at it by now. I turned the radio on. Classic rock station out of Valdosta, the only thing that came in out here. Tom Petty. I turned it up. The slamming was louder than Tom Petty. My phone lit up on the seat beside me. I looked at it because it was face up, and the screen was bright, and I couldn't not look. It wasn't a call. It wasn't a text. It was a video feed already playing. No notification, no app I recognized launching it. Just a rectangle of dim blue light showing a room I knew. Claire's room at Emory. The night ward lighting, that particular shade of almost dark they keep it at so the patients can sleep. Her bed in the center of the frame. Her monitors on the right side, the green lines moving. She was asleep, I could see that much. Her hair spread out on the pillow the way it always was. I'd sat in that room enough times in the last 2 months that I knew exactly where the camera angle was coming from. Somewhere near the door, slightly elevated like a security feed. There was a man standing at her bedside, yellow raincoat, the same cut, the same color as the figures on the swamp roads. He was just standing there, not touching anything, not moving, just standing next to my daughter's bed in the middle of the night looking down at her. I hit the brakes. The slamming stopped, instantly, completely, like a switch. The silence was so sudden it felt loud. I sat there in the middle of Highway 441 with the engine idling and the rain hitting the roof and Tom Petty still going on the radio, and I looked at my phone. The man in the yellow raincoat hadn't moved. I reached over and turned Tom Petty off. The rules weren't safety protocols. I understood that now, sitting there with ice on my windshield and silence behind me and a stranger standing next to my daughter. I'd been thinking of them as precautions, the kind of thing you put on a laminated card because OSHA exists and lawyers exist and somebody somewhere had decided these were the steps. But they weren't steps, they were something else. Something that had to be followed exactly in order every time, because the following was the point. The following was what kept things the way they were supposed to be. And I'd just broken one. I got out of the cab. I don't know what I was thinking exactly. Something like, if I can see it, I can understand it, which is not a thing that turned out to be true. But that's what I was thinking, or close enough. I grabbed the mag light from the door pocket, the big one I kept there for tire checks, and I pushed the door open into the rain. The tropical depression had settled into something steady and mean. Not a downpour, just constant. The kind of rain that soaks you completely in about 45 seconds because there's nowhere for it to go. The road was empty in both directions. No headlights, no nothing. Just the idling engine and the rain and the dark. I went around the back of the Freightliner at a jog. The latch was cold. That's the thing I remember most clearly. How cold the metal was. Colder than the rain. Colder than it had any reason to be in July in Georgia. I got both hands on it and threw it up and pulled the right door open first, then the left. They swung out and I stepped back automatically, the way you do when you don't know what's coming. The crate was split. Not cracked, not dented, split. Clean down the middle like something had pushed outward from the inside with a lot of patience and a lot of force. The two halves had fallen to either side, and they were just sitting there on the trailer floor, these thick lead panels, and between them was the sphere. I don't have a great way to describe it. It was about the size of a basketball, maybe a little bigger. It looked like water that was also light, if that makes any sense. Translucent, kind of, but not empty. There was something moving inside it, slow and constant, like a lava lamp if a lava lamp were also a mirror. And the mirror thing was the part that got me. Every angle I moved the flashlight, I could see my own face in it. Not a reflection exactly. More like it was showing me my face from angles that shouldn't have been possible from where I was standing. Front, side, slightly above. All at once. All me. I stood there in the rain looking at it for probably 15 seconds, which felt like a long time. Then headlights swept across the road behind me. I turned around. A black SUV, the same make and model that was supposed to have been behind me this whole run, pulled up about 30 feet back and stopped. The door opened. Peters got out. He was wearing a tactical vest over a black rain jacket. He had something in his right hand that I didn't recognize, about the size and shape of a handheld radio, but with a wider base and a small screen on the front that was glowing blue. He walked toward me at a normal pace, not rushing, not alarmed. He looked at the open trailer doors, then at me, then at the sphere, and his expression didn't change much. A little tired, maybe. The way you look when something went sideways, but not in a way you didn't plan for. "You opened the doors?" he said. "Yeah." He stopped a few feet away and looked past me at the sphere. He tapped something on the device in his hand and the blue screen changed to green. I waited. Peters looked at me then. He wasn't hostile. That was the weird part. He was just direct, like we were going over a delivery manifest. "Blackwood collects fragments," he said. "Collapsed timelines. Events that happened in one version of the world and got cut off. They're unstable on their own. They need a stabilizing frequency to stay coherent during transport." I looked at him. Okay. "The frequency comes from the driver." He said it flat, like it was obvious. "Specifically from drivers in acute personal distress with a high-stakes outcome attached. The emotional load, the desperation, I guess you'd call it, it generates a measurable signal. That signal is what keeps the fragment from destabilizing in transit." I thought about Claire's surgery. I thought about the number Blackwood had offered me and how fast I'd said yes. I thought about 2 months of rules I'd followed without asking a single question. You picked me because of Claire, I said. We picked you because of the surgery, the insurance denial, the timeline, the cost. Yes. He wasn't apologetic about it. You were a strong candidate. That part I filed away. I'd deal with it later, or I wouldn't, but right now, there were more important things. The man in the yellow raincoat, I said. At the hospital. Peters nodded. Company stabilizer. He's stationed there as a control mechanism. As long as the run completes, he doesn't do anything. He's just there. And if the run doesn't complete... Peters looked at me for a second. He adjusts her timeline. Rolls it back to before she existed. No Claire, no surgery, no reason for you to take the job. The cargo loses its anchor and destabilizes. I heard that. I heard all of it. My brain was doing the thing where it just receives information and doesn't react yet because reacting would cost time I didn't have. I looked at my phone, still in my left hand, still showing the hospital room. The stabilizer had moved. He was closer to the bed now, not touching anything, just closer. So if I walk away right now, I said. Same result, different trigger. Peters held up the device. When you open the doors, the sphere calibrated to your DNA. It's already happened. You're the anchor now, whether you want to be or not. You leave, the calibration breaks, the fragment destabilizes, and the stabilizer at the hospital gets an automatic signal. I looked at the sphere over my shoulder. It was still showing me my own face from every angle. The only way she stays where she is, Peters said, is if you complete the delivery and sign the permanent contract. I turned back to him. Permanent. Permanent. The rain kept coming down. My jacket was soaked through. Peters was standing there with his green screen device and his tactical vest, looking like he had all night, which I guess he did. I looked at my phone again. The stabilizer took one small step toward Claire's bed. I put the phone in my jacket pocket. Peters didn't say anything else. He'd said what he needed to say, and he knew it, and I knew it, and there wasn't really anything left to discuss. That was the whole conversation. That was all of it. I looked at the sphere one more time. It looked back. Then I grabbed the right trailer door and swung it shut, and then the left, and I threw the latch. The metal was still cold. My hands were wet, and the latch was stiff, but I got it locked on the second try. I walked back around the truck to the driver's side and climbed up into the cab. The seat was still warm. The engine was still idling. The GPS was showing Highway 441 again, the route corrected like nothing had happened, the remaining 20 miles laid out in a clean blue line heading southwest. I put my hands on the wheel. Peter's headlights came on behind me. I watched them in the mirror. I put the truck in gear. The first few miles were quiet. Just the engine and the rain and Peter's headlights sitting steady in my mirror about 100 feet back. The GPS showed 20 miles left. The blue line was clean and straight, and I just followed it. The ice was gone. Took maybe 5 minutes after I started moving. I watched it pull back from the edges of the dashboard in small patches, the vents pushing warm air again like nothing had happened. The defroster kicked on automatically and cleared the last of the fog from the windshield corners. I turned it off. I didn't need it anymore. I kept both hands on the wheel and I didn't look back at the trailer. That was the rule. Not a written rule. Not one of Peter's 5, but mine. I'd made it somewhere around mile 3. Don't look back. Don't think about what's behind you. Just drive the 20 miles and get it done. I'm pretty good at that part, actually, compartmentalizing. Claire's doctors called it something else when I described it to them once. They said it like it was a bad thing, like I was avoiding something. Maybe. But it's also how I got through 2 months of swamp roads without losing my mind, so I'll take it. The rain was lighter now. The tropical depression had moved east while I was stopped on the shoulder, and by the time I hit mile 10, the worst of it was just occasional gusts and a wet road. The Freightliner handled fine. I kept it at 55. My phone was in my jacket pocket and I didn't take it out. I thought about that a lot on the last stretch. The video feed, the stabilizer stepping back from Claire's bed after I locked the trailer. Peters had timed that perfectly, or whoever managed the stabilizer had. The message was obvious. You did what we needed, so we did what we promised. Clean transaction. I kept waiting to feel something about it, but mostly I just felt tired. The kind of tired that's past the point of being dramatic about it. Claire was safe. That was the only number that mattered. The fencing showed up around mile 18. Chain link, tall, topped with razor wire, running parallel to the road on both sides. No signs, no markings I could read from the cab. Just fence and floodlights every 50 yards or so, the light washing everything out to a flat gray-white. I slowed to 45. The gate was ahead. A guard booth, 2 figures in dark gear standing outside it, a barrier arm across the road. I pulled up and stopped and rolled my window down. One of the figures walked to my window. He didn't ask for ID. He looked at the truck, looked at me, looked at the mirror on his side like he was checking the trailer. And then he nodded once and walked back to the booth. The barrier arm lifted. Didn't ask for my name. Didn't ask for a single thing. I pulled through. The base was bigger than I'd expected. I don't know what I'd expected. I'd never actually seen it. Just had coordinates and a gate code and Peter's instructions about which road to take once I was inside. It was mostly flat, mostly concrete, a few long, low buildings with no windows. Everything was lit up with the same floodlight setup as the fence line. The road inside was freshly paved, smoother than anything I'd driven on for the last 2 months of swamp routes. I followed the GPS to a wide concrete pad near the center of the base. No bay doors, no loading dock, just open concrete with yellow painted lines and a set of steel anchor points sunk into the ground in a row. I pulled up to the marked stop point and set the brake. Peters pulled in behind me about 30 seconds later. He stayed in his SUV. Then the scientists showed up. There were 6 of them, lead-lined suits, the kind that are bulky in the shoulders and make everyone look about the same size, full face shields. They came from the direction of one of the windowless buildings, walking in a tight group, and they spread out around the truck in a loose circle. Not aggressive, not rushed, just methodical, like they'd done this 100 times. They didn't touch the trailer. I watched them in my mirrors. One of them had a tablet and was reading something off it, looking up at the truck every few seconds. Another had a handheld device I didn't recognize. Small, black, with a single orange light on the side that blinked slow and steady. They moved around the perimeter of the truck and I tracked them as best I could from the cab. Nobody came to my window. Then 2 of them produced welding equipment. I heard it before I fully understood what was happening. The pop and hiss of the torch igniting. I checked my mirror and saw the orange arc of light near the trailer doors, and I sat there for a second just watching it. They were welding the doors shut, not opening them, not unloading anything. Just sealing the trailer with whatever was inside still inside it, with me still in the cab. I kept my hands on the wheel. I didn't know what else to do with them. The welding took about 12 minutes. I watched the clock on the dash. The torch moved along the door seam in a slow, steady line, and I could hear the metal cooling and contracting after each pass. When they finished the doors, they did the hinges too. Thorough. Whatever was in that trailer wasn't coming out the back way. Peters got out of his SUV. He walked to my window and I rolled it down. He had a new laminated card in his hand. Same format as the first one. White card, black text, clear laminate, the kind you get made at a Staples or an Office Depot. He held it out, and I took it. One rule: do not leave the driver's seat. I read it twice. I looked at Peters. "Okay," I said. He nodded and stepped back from the window. I looked at the card again, then set it on the dash next to the old one. The old one had 5 rules. This one had 1. I guess that was progress. My phone buzzed in my jacket pocket. I pulled it out. The video feed was still open. I hadn't closed the app. The stabilizer was walking out of Claire's room. just walking out, not looking back, not doing anything dramatic. He went through the door, and the hallway camera caught him for a second, and then he was gone. Claire was still in her bed. The monitors beside her showed steady lines. A nurse came in about 30 seconds later and checked something on the IV stand and left again. Normal. Just a normal hospital room. Then the payment notification came through. One transfer, the full amount. The number sat on my screen for a second, and I looked at it, and I thought about the parking lot at St. Anthony's. Sitting in my truck, eating a gas station sandwich and doing the math on my phone for the 14th time, trying to figure out if there was any combination of loans and payment plans and second jobs that got me to that number. There wasn't. There never was. There it was now. I put the phone in my pocket. Then I heard the crane. I felt it before I saw it. A vibration in the cab, low and mechanical, coming from above. I looked up through the windshield, and there was a crane arm moving into position overhead, heavy cable swinging slightly in the wind. One of the scientists with the tablet was talking into a radio. The hook came down and connected to the lift points on the truck frame with a sound like a heavy door closing. I gripped the wheel. The Freightliner came off the ground. The shaft was maybe 40 feet across. I could tell that much from the way the headlights hit the walls before the truck cleared ground level. Concrete. Old concrete, the kind that's got water stains running down it in long, dark stripes. Then the walls rose up past the windows, and I couldn't see much of anything except the cable above me going taut and the slow mechanical descent. It took about 2 minutes. I counted them. The base disappeared in sections. First the scientists, then the lights on the perimeter fence, then the sky itself. Just a rectangle of gray-black getting smaller above the crane arm until the shaft doors came together, and that was it. A seam of light for a second. Then nothing. The engine kept running. I could feel it in the floor, in the seat, in the wheel under my hands. The gauges all read normal. Fuel, temperature, RPM, all of it sitting exactly where it should. The containment sensors on the cab monitor were green, every single one. I sat with that for a minute. The cab lights were on. The dim amber ones I usually kept on for long overnight hauls, so I wasn't driving in complete dark. They lit the dash, the card Peters had handed me, the cracked corner of the windshield from a rock I'd caught somewhere on I-10 back in October. That crack had been bugging me for weeks. I'd kept meaning to get it fixed. I was looking at it now. The new card was laminated same as the first one. Same font. Same clean edges. Peters had handed it to me like it was a parking pass. One rule. That was it. Do not leave the driver's seat. I'd read it 4 times already. I put it on the dash and I didn't pick it up again. The monitors. I kept coming back to the monitors. There were 3 of them mounted to the right of the steering column. One for the rear camera, one for the containment sensors, one that Peters had wired in during the 3rd month that I'd always assumed was some kind of additional telemetry. That one was showing Claire's hospital account now. The transfer had cleared. I could see the confirmation number, the amount, the timestamp. 12:47 in the morning. I checked the rear camera feed. Just the trailer. The doors were welded shut, the weld still bright and rough-looking. Nothing to see. I checked the containment feed. Green. I checked the hospital account screen again. The stabilizer was gone from her room. I'd watched him leave. Walked out, didn't look back, and the door swung shut behind him, and the room was just Claire again, asleep. The IV stand. The monitor with the little green line. Normal. Just a completely normal hospital room in Atlanta with my daughter in it, and the surgery scheduled for 4 weeks out, and the money sitting in the account to cover every cent of it. I'd gotten what I came for. That was the honest truth of it, every term, every single one. I didn't know what to do with that exactly. I'm not a person who sits still well. 12 years of long haul. You'd think I'd have figured it out, but driving isn't sitting still. Driving is doing something. This was just sitting. Engine running. dark outside, hands on the wheel because the card said so and because honestly I didn't have any better ideas. I thought about Claire at 7 years old, the summer she'd decided she was going to learn every state capital. She'd made me quiz her every night for 3 weeks. She got all 50 eventually. Took her longer on the ones out west, but she got them. I don't know why I thought about that. I just did. The vibration started maybe 20 minutes in. It came up through the chassis first, into the seat, then into the wheel, low and steady. Not the frantic slamming from before, nothing like that. This was patient, rhythmic, like something had found the right position and was just there, settling, the way an engine sounds when it's been running long enough to warm up completely and everything's found its groove. It wasn't loud. I almost could have talked myself out of noticing it. I didn't talk myself out of it. I just noticed it and kept my hands on the wheel and kept my eyes on the dark ahead. I'd been thinking about the rules since Peters first handed me that laminated card in the Blackwood parking lot. 5 rules, clean and simple, and I'd treated them like safety protocols because that's what they looked like. Don't stop too long. Keep the heat on. Don't look at the doors. I'd been a good driver. I'd followed them exactly. And the whole time I was following them, I was the mechanism. That's what Peters had said. My compliance was the mechanism. My desperation was the frequency that kept the thing in that crate stable and dormant and manageable. I'd spent 2 months being useful without knowing what I was useful for. I wasn't sure if that made me feel better or worse. Probably neither. It just was what it was. The vibration stayed steady. I kept my eyes forward. There wasn't much to look at. The headlights hit maybe 15 feet of concrete floor ahead of the truck and then just stopped. The walls were close on both sides, close enough that I probably couldn't have opened the cab door more than a foot. Not that I was going to open the cab door. The card was clear on that. I thought about Peters handing me that card, the way he'd done it. Matter of fact, like it was the most reasonable thing. 1 rule. I'd almost laughed. After 5 rules and 2 months, and a tropical depression, and a tire on Highway 441, and a phone call I never got to make, and a video feed of a man in a yellow raincoat standing next to my daughter's bed, 1 rule felt almost simple. Almost. I checked the monitors again. Containment, green. Hospital account, confirmed. Rear camera, just the trailer. I put both hands back on the wheel. The thing I kept coming back to, and I know this probably sounds wrong, was that I'd do it again. Same choice, same night, same road. If Peters had walked up to me in that parking lot and laid out every single thing that was going to happen, I would have taken the job. Because the math doesn't change. Claire needed that surgery. The number was the number. There wasn't another way to get there. I knew that about myself now. I'd wondered sometimes, in an abstract way, what I'd actually do if something really tested it. Now I knew. I'd sit in a hole in the ground under the Okefenokee swamp, with something in a split lead crate behind me, engine running, hands on the wheel, because my daughter was going to be okay. That was it. That was the whole thing. The vibration rolled forward through the seat, steady and low. I let it. It wasn't going anywhere, and neither was I. I reached over and turned the radio on. Found a station that was mostly static with a country song fading in and out underneath it. I left it there. It was better than nothing. The song was something old, something I half recognized. Steel guitar and a voice I couldn't quite make out. I settled back in the seat. Claire's surgery was in 4 weeks. She'd be okay. The money was there. The stabilizer had walked out of her room and not come back. I'd checked 3 times. She'd be okay. I kept both hands on the wheel, kept my eyes on the dark ahead, and I held the 1 rule that was left.